I've got a special guest for you today. Someone who I know a lot of you have been requesting that I get on the channel for a long time, and someone who I really wanted to meet as well as I read his first book, The Rational Male, and it really opened up a lot of perspective for me personally. And I know a lot of you have had your lives changed by this book. I've got Rollo Tomassi here, so thanks for coming out on the channel, Rollo.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
So I have to say, definitely, your book has been one that I've recommended for a long time, Rational Male, since I
Mhm.
read it, and I think it's a big eye opener book. I think it's really, I think a lot of people consider it the fundamental red pill, philosophy or theology
Mhm.
that really opened up a lot of people's eyes. But yeah, so I just appreciate you putting that out
Oh,
there and
sure,
the work
sure.
you've done.
I wrote the book that I wanted to read, you know. I think it was back in 2000, gosh, right, 2004, 2005 when Neil Strauss published The Game, right?
Mhm.
And I thought Game because I was at the time I was there was no manosphere, there was no real. I mean, we talked about red pill on like certain forums, but it wasn't like there was like some red pill movement or anything like that. And so I read The Game and I thought it was good. It was a good book, but it wasn't what I wanted. Right. I mean, it's funny because like the way that I don't know if you've ever read The Game by Neil
Yeah.
Strauss, but if you have the edition that I do, it looks like a Bible. Right. I mean,
Right.
the inside of it and the outside of the way to his credit, I wish I had more nice things to say about Neil Strauss and, ever since then, um, but he did a good job with the book. Okay. I mean, the production value and everything else was very nice.
Yeah.
I know he's actually, and I know that he wrote also the book called The Dirt, which was about Motley Crue, which now is a new Netflix thing that's coming up. So I know the guy's, he puts out a quality product when he wants to. But so I saw this and I'm like, okay, this is going to be cool. This is going to be like the Bible of PUA, because it wasn't even red pill then. It was just all about pickup artistry.
Right.
And I read it and it just kind of like wasn't what I wanted. I wanted like more. I wanted like something that was like, okay, here's this, all of this stuff has been codified, right? All of these techniques and all of this stuff. And it's just like, it was good for an entertainment value was
For sure.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. But as far as like trying to learn anything or teach anything, and so when I read that, that was in 2005, and I was writing for So Suave at the time, which So Suave was it was a technically it was a PUA forum, but it was a little bit more. It was a little different than a PUA forum. It wasn't about so much about seduction as it was about like just men coming together and sharing their experiences, right? And so I just for the first book and really my blog, which came out in 2011. I took a lot of the experiences that I had on those forums and put them into a blog form, and then later on, I had people say, "You really need to put this into a book." And so, I went from writing about all of these discussions that we had on the SOSWA forum, and then putting them into blog format, and then then having that be a discussion kind of thing, and then sort of carrying that over into a book form. So I think I've probably rewritten a lot of this stuff probably at least 3 times, maybe 4 times now. And then that goes along with like my experience in psychology and evolutionary psychology and behavioral psychology and the whole shebang that goes with that too. But that's what produced the book. That's what it came to. And I was only really ever going to produce that one book. I never had any plans to do any other books after that. And one of the things that people complain about is like in the first book, it's like the type is like really small.
Oh yeah.
It's like 10-point type. And I did that because I wanted to keep it as low priced as possible so it was accessible to people.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to put a lot of stuff in. In fact, by the time I got to the end of the book, I'm like, I gotta pull stuff out of this because there's so much that I wanted to cram into it. And I was trying to keep it under like 300 pages, so that I could only charge like $9.99 for it. I was going to charge the least amount that I could get for it. It was there so to help guys.
Yeah.
I wasn't, I've done pretty well for myself in my real line of work. And so I really wanted to help guys out with this. And then, so after that, everybody wanted me to start going on like doing some speaking engagements. And then I did preventive medicine because everybody said, that's the second book. And they kept saying, I wish I would have had this stuff before I made this bad decision, or I got
All right.
married,
Yeah.
or before I had kids, or before I got hooked up with this, this really crazy woman, right? And so that's what I wrote for the second book, because it was a timeline of what guys could expect from women between the ages of, say, like 15 years old and all the way up to like 50 years old. And just sort of the phases that most of these women will, women in general will go through at different stages of their maturity. And so that's why I wrote that. And then the last one that I just released in 2017, which is Positive Masculinity, and that was more about like social aspects of the red pill, as well as parenting. So for
Yeah.
guys who want to be a parent, or guys who are already parents, or guys who are what we call awakened while married, those guys who become red pill, but they're still kind of trapped in situations that were created before they became red pill, right? So
Right.
they were like blue pill conditioned, they got married, they had kids, and all of a sudden now they're reading my stuff, or they're waking up to like the manosphere and everything. And that book entailed all of that kind of stuff, and then as well as the social aspects as well. So that's all three. That's my my elevator pitch for all three of the books.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on on the game. I think it was a disappointment to a lot of guys because there was like no, especially for me, like I like the analysis. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, that's what I really liked about your book in Rational Male. It's like you could tell that you had, like you said, you rewrote a lot of these things 3 times because there was a
Mm-hmm.
deep level of thinking involved in this and the actual psychology and the philosophy behind the thing. Whereas the game was like, I think the game kind of opened up for a lot of guys that this is possible, but
The
it wasn't.
game, I think
But
the
then it was like, how?
game, well, yeah, that was it. It's like when I started reading, like people always ask me, well, Rollo, when did you have your red pill awakening or whatever? And I don't really have any one particular time. It was more of like a gradual process. I think back in 2001, I started listening to Tom Likas, who's a terrestrial radio host, and he talked about a lot of red pill stuff, but way before it was even called red pill. We're talking like
Mhm.
the late 90s into the early 2000s. And so I was already kind of primed uh, for the game, for reading the game. And then I've always been a moderator or a really active participant on the SOSWAP forums, and that had gone on since like 2000, 2001. And it changed. The forums changed over the years. The most recent one started in 2002. So like I can find you Rollo Tomassi posts from as far back as 2002 on that site. And yeah, exactly what you're saying is like when I was in school at the time, and I decided to double major. I have a BFA, I have a bachelor's of fine arts, and I have a bachelor's of science in behavioral psychology. And the reason I decided to get my double major in behavioral science or behavioral psychology is because I was dealing with guys in peer counseling at the time. Like I would have, and I always got the older guys, right? Here I was like in my 30s, right? And I was like trying to be a peer counselor to guys who are in their 60s.
Yeah.
And and so I'm like, okay, well, I guess, and so at the same time, I'm doing this because it was my minor, and then I decided I was going to double major in it. It was because I started reading a lot of the seduction communities posts, and what they were really talking about had a lot of parallels in behavioral psychology. So like
Mhm.
when say something like mystery method, when mystery was saying something to the effect of like cocky and funny, or neg hits, or all of these techniques that were old school pickup artist techniques, I was like, okay, that's cool, and I understand why this works, but they don't seem like they understand why it works, right? And so
Right.
there's like a psychological principle underneath why all of um, these techniques that they were teaching guys at the time, how to pick up girls. Like, why does a neg hit work? Why does agree and amplify work? Why does amused mastery work? And these are just like common techniques, or like principles, I guess, of various seduction communities. And so I really wanted to explore that because I saw a lot of parallels in behavioral psychology with how women were treating men at that time.
Right.
Like I was studying operant conditioning, and I'm like, this is just how women are with guys, right? I mean, it's all about behavioral modification. Like if you want to have sex, then you have to jump through these hoops, right? You have to perform a desired behavior to get your reward. And so I started making these connections. And I'm sure you've read my first book. In the introduction of my first book, I said, look, I'm just a guy who connects a lot of dots.
Right. Yeah.
I get dots from everybody, and I don't think that this community could exist at any other time in history right now, simply because we have the internet and we have more communication. I can talk to guys all over the world. I don't know where you're at right now, but I'm talking to you wherever you are. And I talk to guys in Bangladesh. I talk to guys in Japan. I talk to guys in South Africa. And they're all, we're all kind of agglomerating, I guess, all of this information so that we can, sort it out and try to find something useful about it, right? And so I think I'm just probably the guy who can articulate these things that guys are already thinking anyways. In fact, I get that a lot, but guys say, I've always thought this stuff, but I never was able to put it into words, and I guess I can put it into words. So.
Yeah, that's what I really appreciate is
Mhm.
your ability to kind of really dig deep and figure out, why is this thing working? Why
Mhm.
is this actually working this way? And I like also just the approach of, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this, because I feel like a lot of the red pill kind of MGTOW community has kind of gone off from where, like when I read your book, when I read your book,
Mhm.
the first thing I thought about, was, okay, all this like pain and hardship that I went through in my life earlier, not understanding this stuff, none of it's personal. Like, this is
Mhm.
just a force of nature, and I'm not angry. I'm just accepting now. Like, it's a shock to the system, but it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I can accept this, and there's not. I don't. I didn't feel like there's a sense of malice. I just feel like this is just kind of how nature and evolution has
Mhm.
evolved, and this is just where we're at.
Mhm.
But I feel like kind of now a lot of the the videos I see on the internet. Like, I think when your book first came out, it was kind of like, like no one was talking about this, and now it's like everyone just kind of, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, red pill, red pill,
Yeah,
red
it's
pill.
matter of fact now. Now everybody supposedly knows it. I get what you're saying. There's a couple like what has happened, I would say, within the last like 12 to 15 years of what's become the manosphere. Because remember, back when I started, there was no manosphere. We
Right.
didn't even call it red pill. We called it unplugging from the matrix because it was just a useful analogy at the time. But then everybody took that and ran with it. And so now I see guys in the alt-right using red pill. I got red pilled, right? Or I see MGTOW guys talking about how they're red pill. Or I see TradCon guy, traditional conservatives saying that they're red pilled, right? And
Right.
everybody wants to use it as their own little personal brand right now, and they want to. It's like a verb, right? I mean, red pill has
Exactly.
become a verb. They're going to get red pilled, right? And it's like that's not what it's about. Maybe it's just a convenient term to say, hey, look, my eyes are open to something that's a little bit different. But when I talk about red pill principles, I'm talking about like intersectional dynamics. I'm not talking about
Right.
politics. I'm not talking
Exactly.
about sociology or economics or any of that kind of stuff. I'm talking about just how because that's where it all came from. And if you want me to go dig it up for you, I can find those posts from 2002 on SoSwab where we started talking about the red pill, and that's where it came from. But yeah, everybody kind of wants to make it their little pet brand right now. And as far as MGTOW goes, I agree with a lot of what they have to say because I think that they got the analysis right.
Hmm.
Are they particularly red pill? I think so. In the sense that they understand the mechanics and they understand analyzing intersectional dynamics. But where I part ways with them is in their solutions.
Right.
And
Exactly.
then so that's MGTOW. When it comes to TradCons, same thing. A lot of TradCons want to agree with, or well, they do agree with a lot of red pill principles, at least from an intersectional dynamic standpoint, they do. But then they want to add another layer of morality onto that. So it's like, well, just for sake of example, like there's hypergamy, right? And
Right.
people think that I just overemphasize hypergamy all the time. We're like, well, hypergamy is the basis for a lot of other social complexities that you don't realize that it's a part of. Like when I talk about how abortion is the ultimate expression of hypergamy, I get chewed out for that from the tradcons because they just want to say that, well, that's just evil. It's just evilness. I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's fine if that's where you want to go with that, but I always stay with the nuts and bolts. I always
Right.
stay. I try, and I've said this a million times. I said, The red pill needs to stay amoral and aracial and
Mm-hmm.
apolitical and a-religious, and it has to be an objective kind of loose science. I'm fond of calling it a praxology. Okay, so what that is the science of human behavior based on the idea that human behavior has some kind of purpose or some kind of function to it, right? And so where I run into a problem with, say, like tradcons is like I use a lot of principles from evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, behavioral psychology. And then my experience with other guys over the years, and like I said, we were taking all of their data and sort of like parsing that out into various principles. I get into a lot of trouble, but I end up locking horns with tradcons because of that, because they say, well, women don't have agency and it's all of our, we need to take more responsibility. And it's like, yeah, it's all responsibility, but it's no authority. Right. And so when I'm talking to these guys, it's I have to take into consideration that they want to add a layer of morality to the red pill. When I talk to, like, say, incels, or I talk to MGTOWs, it's almost the same way. They don't want to lay morality on it, but they want to just sort of give up. Right. They want to say, like,
Exactly.
what, the reality of the harsh reality of the world is exactly what Rollo's saying. It's just about all of this stuff that we've been talking about in intersexual dynamics and the red pill. But then they want to say, and I don't fit into that. Right. I will never be built. I will never be. And it's, what, and the juice isn't worth the squeeze. That's what they want to say, is that it's not, to go through and jump through all the hoops and to make all of the to do all the hard work to get to a point where you can be successful at it. They say, well, that's not worth it. It's not worth it for you to worry so much about personal development, because you're just doing it for a woman. Like, you're basing your self-worth or your self-esteem on the really kind of fickle opinions of women. Right. And I guess I can understand why they say that, but they want to give up. I mean, eventually they want to give up. And again, there's different kinds of MGTOWs. Okay. There's the real hardliners who are, never going to talk to another woman again and go live in a cabin somewhere. Right. And then there's the other guys who are just like, what, I'm going to just live my life and be who I am. And if a woman is a part of that, then fine. If she's not a part of that, then fine. And I think this is actually a fundamental part of going red pill, or like having your eyes opened, right? Is once you have been cut away from your blue pill conditioning, and once you've been unplugged from the matrix, you can't help but live your life in a different way, because you're seeing things all around you. It's like I have a principle that I talk about. It's called putting on your red pill lenses, right? So when you're listening to music, or you're watching a movie, or you're reading a story, or watching TV, or you see a commercial at the Super Bowl, or you see what, all of these things in your environment going on around you, and you look at that from a red pill perspective, you can't help but think in a different way.
Right.
And so I tell guys to be really careful about introducing their friends to the red pill, because it ruins the lives of a lot of guys. Because even if they stick their heads back in the sand and they go into complete denial, then eventually they're going to see something going on around them, or maybe it'll be a girlfriend, or it'll be their sister, or their mom will act somewhere, or somebody at work will act will act out in a certain way that I've talked about in one of my books, and they go, okay, that's what he was talking about right there. And you can't unsee it. You can't put yourself back into it. I think a lot of guys try to do that, but you can't really do that. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good assessment. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, just that perspective of, I feel like some people maybe shouldn't have been red pilled, because they can't, like, it's almost like if you're gonna be awakened to this reality, you need to be able to handle it. You need to be emotionally strong enough to be able to handle it, to be able to master your own emotions, to be able to be objective, almost like Buddhist in the nature of, like, accepting this is, otherwise you get into this place where there's animosity and anger and hatred, and it's like, that's a dark place.
Well, and I get that from my critics a lot, particularly feminists. And now these are the people who are like, just they're not tradcons, they're not MGTOWs. These are just people who are just ideologically opposed to whatever I say, whatever it is. But they like to think that the red pill is all about hating women. It's all, you're just teaching these guys to be misogynists, right? No, it's not. It's teaching guys to have an objective understanding of intersexual dynamics and where they
Right.
fit into that. It's not about, and this is one of my other sayings, is it's not, the red pill doesn't exist to make you hate women. It exists so that you won't hate them for what they can never be to you. Right.
Right.
Like when I talk about the differences in concept of love between men and women, guys hate that, but like they can't deny it. But they,
Yeah.
like when I talk about the differences in love, it's my belief that men love idealistically and women love opportunistically. And of course, when you say something like opportunist, they think, oh, well, that's horrible. And how could it not be about just love for the sake of love? And guys, jump on me because they think that women agree with them. They think that they agree about love from an idealistic, love for the sake of love, whereas women don't allow themselves to love unless a man fits a checklist, unless he checks off some of the boxes on her hypergamous checklist. So maybe if he does that, then maybe she'll allow herself to love that guy. But it's not that men and women have a differing concept of love. But when I say something like that, it sounds like I'm saying, oh, women are just these horrible, opportunistic gold diggers. No, that's not what it's about. But it's so you will understand how they're approaching a particular aspect of intersexual dynamics of dealing with men, right? Or men dealing with women. And it's not about hating them. It's about understanding them. Like you were saying before, it's about, it's not that, like, say something like hypergamy or mental point of origin or whatever. It's not that those things are like evil. It's just that they are, right? That there's just something
Right.
that's there, and how you respond to that and how you apply that information. Maybe it can be evil, maybe it can be good. It just depends on, but what I don't talk about the inherent goodness of this or the inherent evilness of this. I talk about just what is. I'm not interested in what should be. I'm interested in what is. And then that's why I allow guys to make their own decisions. So it's like one guy say, well, Rollo, how come you don't have 12 rules for life like Dr. Jordan Peterson has? How come you don't have some formula for me to live a better life? I just can't believe that you would do all, how could you possibly expose us to all this great information and not give us the guide, the guidance to go? I'm like, because I'm not, well, first of all, I'm not trying to sell you anything. And second of all, for anybody who would tell you that they have some pat answer as to how you personally can live a better life is selling you something.
For sure.
Because I'm a 50-year-old guy. Okay. I understand, everything up to where I'm at right now, but I'm not about to tell a 60-year-old guy, here, let me tell you something, and explain things to them. I'm not going to tell a 70-year-old, an 80-year-old guy. I'm not going to tell a black guy from, from Chicago somewhere, who's 20 years old, and tell him how he can live a better life, or somebody who's in, like I said, Bangladesh or wherever else, because my experience is not what their experience is. And that's why I'm more about giving the tools to guys and then letting them take those tools and use them to create a better life for themselves. I'm not in the business of making better men. I'm in the business of having men make themselves better men, right? To give them the tools and the information that they need so that they can do that. And sometimes that involves probably what you get into is like, make self-improvement, being the best version of yourself that you can be. Actually, it's so much better to have the qualities that you're trying to ape in, say, pickup artistry, if you actually really have those qualities. I mean,
right.
I mean,
Exactly.
why would you not want? Why would you not want that?
Yeah.
And so you're gonna live when you become red pill aware. It's really tough because a lot of guys have to be cut away from that blue pill paradigm, and they really are invested in that, and they really hope against hope that the Disney dreams do come true, right? And that they can take all this information, this red pill information, and use it to get all of those dreams and hopes. But the thing is that once you get into that, you understand that all those hopes were lies to begin with, and you need to rebuild yourself from the ground up. And a lot of guys don't have that. They don't have that in them. They just either they think, that's what you were saying before, is like they just give up on themselves, or they don't, or maybe they just like go complete isolationist. I'm not going to say MGTOW. I would say they just isolate themselves. Like they want to wall off the world and not deal with it because they don't think that they didn't get a good hand of cards weren't dealt to them at the beginning. realize that there's more potential and there's more opportunity. I think I'm very much an optimist when it comes to the red pill. It's just that guys need to understand how to take that and use it to their best advantage, and I don't think a lot of guys know how to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in 100%
Yeah.
agreement with you. That's yeah, I think so many things get misinterpreted and just taken personally when
Mhm.
it's not. To me, it's a very freeing thing. I don't know. I mean, there was definitely a period where that whole Disney fantasy. I was like, oh, I can't have this. And then I think a lot of guys and I kind of fell into the same trap. I'm like, oh, I can use these tools and then I can get that. And
Mhm.
it's like, no, because I mean,
Mhm.
we should have learned the lesson just from mystery in the game. I
Mhm.
mean, he's shown us
Right.
exactly what happens when you try to do that.
Right.
And then,
Well, that's
but
where
yeah,
that's kind of where the purple pill comes in. And people always ask me, well, what's a purple pill? The purple pill is the guys who become red pill aware and they still think that they can use that red pill awareness to achieve their blue pill ideals and their
right,
hopes and their dreams and everything. And just like you were saying, Mystery is a really good example of that. And I love Mystery to death. And I think he's got some really, I mean, when it comes to pickup artistry and it comes to understanding, and he asks the right questions. All right.
right,
This is
yeah,
no cut against him, but there's a reason that he is suicidal and he's always been suicidal. And that's because he has never been able to take that pickup artistry knowledge or that red pill knowledge about women and use it to achieve his blue pill dreams like that he grew up on. That, like, oh, we're going to have I'm going to have a wife and a daughter and a white picket fence, and I'm going to do all this stuff, and all of the the goals that were set for him by the blue pill, he tries to use red pill knowledge to achieve. And what you have to understand, when you unplug yourself, you have to give up that.
yeah,
That's one of the reasons why when we talk about guys unplugging, if they go through 5 stages, well, it's like the 5 stages of grief, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there's like anger, acceptance, blah, blah. Okay. One of the reasons why you go through those stages of grief, or like accepting death, is because part of you is actually dying.
yeah,
The old blue pill beta version of you is dead, and there's no going back to it, and people don't know how to deal with that, or they deal with it in different ways. Some people, like, they're like, hey man, now that I know everything, or now that I know enough to do something with this, you've given me the tools, I can go forward and do something. But then there's the other people who just, like, they just want to give up and they just want to crawl in a hole, and because they're trying to get to those old school goals. And so that's why I talk about purple pill guys. Like, mostly there's these life coaches who want to say, well, Rollo's got great stuff, but he's just angry. He's always it's truthful, but it's anger, right? And it's like, no, it's not anger.
right,
It's simply truth, and it's simply tools, and how you're going to use it is up to you. But what these guys are doing is they want to say that you can actually do that. They make a living off of trying to sell blue pill guys on red pill dynamics so that they can actually do that. And I'm always against that. I'm always against the purple pill, because it's a half measure. It's a
yeah,
diluted down. It's like they take the parts of the red pill that they really think uh, are okay because they're flattering to women, and they might even promote the idea of a guy's self-improvement. Like, of course you got to be a better guy, stand up straight, put your chest back on it, that kind of stuff. um, and who's going to disagree with that, right? But then when I say, well, all women are hypergamous, and here's why. Oh no, that's horrible, that's misogyny, that's terrible, and they want to, oh, you hate women, no, I don't. I'm just telling you that I'm giving you the
right.
fuller picture. I'm giving you all the information instead of just the information that I can turn a buck with. So
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I mean, I always tell guys when I'm advising or coaching, I say, well, I mean, honestly, like, because what we know about hypergamy is you have to be the best possible guy. Like, why should you improve yourself? Well,
mhm,
because at any given time, you have to be the best possible option that she has.
mhm,
And if you're willing to, but you should be doing that because that's what you should be doing in life anyway.
right.
And if you're just doing that, if you're focused on your mission, on being the best person, on your goals as a man and accomplishing that, then naturally you're gonna be that. And if it's not,
Mhm,
then you go back to the stoic philosophy of, I like when Seneca's like, you look at your child and you say, imagine that they're going to die tomorrow, and you look at your
mhm,
wife and you imagine that she's going to die tomorrow. And it's like, that's, if you live your life like that, then you're like, okay, well, I appreciate, when I have this person in my life, and
mhm,
when I don't expect them to be there forever. i
mhm,
i, I understand the nature of things. Heck, I mean, even guys, like, from the same psychology, our feelings change, our lusts and desires change. And it's like,
Mhm.
these are just, you have to assume that the same thing is happening and be willing to let everything go. And if
Mhm.
you are, then to me, life becomes a wonderful place, because
Mhm.
I don't put any obligations on anyone. I don't allow anyone to put any obligations on me. And I just accept what, what comes, what
Mhm.
goes. But I know that's, it's definitely a, a hard reality. Like, there's so many responses that are not acceptance, that are like fight, resist, this is a lie, this is, trying to disavow or discredit, that, when it's just, I just want to know what is the objective reality, and then
Mhm.
from there I can handle it.
And then you
So
have the tools. Yeah. And
yeah.
then you have the tools to build the life that you want to do. Yeah. And then, as far as like, building yourself up, I mean, I think men and gosh, it's like, how long do we have to explain this? I think men tend to be more idealistic, and what I call they're meritorious. Okay, meaning that
Mhm.
they build themselves based on merit. We tend to look outward. Men tend to be, and this is like a principle of Dr. Steven Pinker, says men tend to be more interested in things, like things in the outside world, things, whereas women tend to be more concerned with people, with dealing like the internal world, whereas men deal with the external world. I have this one blog post called Idealism. I think I might have put it in the third book. I think it's a chapter in the third book. Anyways, but you won't see this in the third book. Is that I usually put a illustrative photograph on all of my blog posts. Well, on this particular occasion, I found this picture of this couple, and they're sitting on a picnic blanket at the park or something, and the guy's got a camera, and he's got the camera, and he's out and he's looking at the world, right, with the
Yeah.
camera, and he's looking at what he can see and take a picture of, whereas the woman is lying back on her back, and she's got the camera faced at herself, like she's going to do a selfie with the camera. And I thought that is like the most perfect illustration of just basically the mental firmware of men and women. Men want to
Yeah.
we want to test and see what's possible. We want to go out there and build things. We want to solve. Men are natural deductive problem solvers. Women tend to be focused themselves more internally. They're better at communication than us. They have have basically have different wiring in our brains. Just the way that our brains are structured. Men and women tend to have different evolved mental firmware. We come out of the womb with a set of firmware that women get and that men get, and
Yeah.
that whatever you do with that is up to you, and how you decide to either accept it or resist it is, that's a learning process depending on what you want to do. But the fact of the matter is like, we're not born blank slates, and women tend to be more collectivist, and men tend to be more meritorious. Okay, that's one of the reasons, like, because we live in a gynocentric feminine primary social order today. It's one of the reasons why we keep hearing things like socialism and collectivism and stuff like that when it comes to our politics, because we're more focused on the female side of things right now, whereas everything that's led up to this, right, has been based on a male perspective. It's been meritorious, and these are just like basic things that I think that guys need to understand. But like, because we tend to be idealists, and because we tend to we want to make the most of ourselves, and it's not just for girls, it's for ourselves. We want to be I mean, I think that I would sincerely doubt that there's anybody who doesn't want to be a better version of themselves, or doesn't want to be,
Right.
you can always learn a new skill, right? You can always learn, even if it's just like learning a hobby or whatever. There's always something that you can add to your skill set. Okay, even if it's just something as minor as that. We go to school to become different people, right? I mean, we go to uh, we learn from other men to become, something more than what we were before. We want to know, we're focusing on what's possible, what's the outside world is going to be possible for us. And part of that is I think making ourselves our own mental point of origin. And I think that one of the biggest disservices we do to our boys today is we teach them that the female world is the correct world. The female response is the correct response. If you, if there's we teach boys to not to make themselves their first order of thinking, or because we don't want you to be selfish. You want to have a servant's heart. You want to you think of others before you think of yourself. That's what we teach boys all the time. But what we're really teaching them is we're teaching them to prioritize or be deferential to the women in their lives, to the female teachers, that the overwhelmingly female teachers that they have in their lives, to their mothers, to their sisters. Carry a girl's books home from school, to not to do anything except for to put themselves as their first mental the first thought in their brains when it comes to making decisions. And if there's a reason for the overwhelming amount of blue pill beta guys who are confused about their masculinity right now, it stems from the idea that that men must be taught to take themselves off the pedestal and put women on the pedestal, and not just a woman. I mean, like womankind on the pedestal.
Right.
And that's, I think, the hardest part of unplugging from the matrix and unplugging from that blue pill conditioning, is putting themselves back in and internalizing this idea that they must come first, that their well-being and their decisions come before anybody else. Because most guys don't think that way. They think about, how's this going to affect my wife? How's this going to affect, what will my wife think if I do this? Right.
Exactly.
How will my marriage be affected if I do this? Right. They're not thinking about themselves. Like, oh, should I take this job? Well, it's not what's going to benefit me. It's, well, my wife won't allow me to do that. I can't do that because my wife is my first mental point of origin. That's what they think. Right. Well, I'm of the opinion, I'm a big proponent of what's called enlightened self-interest. Yep. And enlightened self-interest is, I can't help anyone until I can help myself first, or I can't help anyone as well as when I help myself first. And that's the really tough part, because people think you're a rat bastard, selfish punk, because and they think that that's evil. They think, oh, you're just telling men to be selfish misogynists. No, I'm not. I'm telling you, you need to make yourself, and it has to come from in here. Exactly. It has to be like it, and it can't be just it's not. You can no longer. It can't be like, okay, I'm presented with a decision. Oh yeah, Rollo said I should think first. That's not it. That has to be the thing. You have to think about it right away, and it comes from constant practice, of course, but you have to make that change, and you have to internalize that change, so that it is your default response is to do what's best for you first. Because if your wife is if your wife is in her frame, or your girlfriend is in her frame, whatever, and she is in your frame, what your decisions are going to be what she's going to go along with anyways, because she is living in your world. You're not living in her world. And again, that's something that's really tough to tell guys. It's hard to tell guys you need to make yourself your own mental point of origin, because they're so used to being a servant, to being useful and a utility for people. And then, so that's really hard for them to accept. The other thing that's hard for them to accept is that they have to, just because you are making the best of yourself does not necessarily mean that you can't use the results of that to get girls, or to better your life with, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Like, because this is what I call the crisis of motive. And I think this was in the second book. Crisis of motive is like, who do you do things for? Right. I'm trying to give you some good stuff, because I know what your podcast is about. But what's like, why do you do things? Like, why do you go to the gym? Why do you lift? Right. And guys will go, well, I lift for me. Yeah, but you also look pretty. You look a whole lot better, and chicks look at you, and you get a lot of female attention because of that. So, are you really doing it for that, or are you really doing it for yourself? And I'm here to say that you can do it for both. It's okay.
Exactly.
It's fine. Really, it's okay. I want to look better. It's like I go to the gym, and I will never let myself get overweight, because I like sex enough to never do that. Right? Oh, you're so shallow. Yeah, I guess I am.
Well, fuck, everyone is shallow. Like, it's just the people that are self-aware enough to admit it is the difference. And I think that's exactly even the same thing, like you're saying, with the selfishness is it's like we're all like just biologically programmed to self-preservation is our number one priority. All organisms, right? This is the number one priority. And if you're trying to act in a non-selfish way, it's just an implicit contract. You're just trying to get something to actually benefit you, and it's fake. And so I always think of it in terms of like, if you're unselfish, I mean, if you're selfish, if you put yourself first, and operate from what you're actually your true nature is anyway, then when you actually do express a compliment or kindness or love to someone, it's actually meaningful. It's not fake. Whereas 99% of the world, it's all fake because they're only doing it out of obligation, or they're doing it to get something from you. But if you're living already free, if you're already putting yourself first, then every act that you do is selfish in nature. And so it must also be true and genuine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that a lot of guys, and I hate, I got to keep using the gym again, but it's like,
Yeah.
when guys tell me, like, I go to the gym because because I have a better cardiovascular, or I have better strength, or I can lift heavy objects, or saying, like, there's a utility for it. And I'm like, well, that's fine. But it's like, we're going to the gym to look good. Okay. We want to
Exactly.
go,
Yeah.
we want to look good. I mean, why do women who are planning to get divorced end up in the, killing themselves in the gym like 6 months before the papers are filed? Well, because they want to do that. And people aren't stupid, right? I mean, if they want to make a change in their lives, there's one thing about like making a change in your life, because you really feel like you need to, or you're doing it just to achieve, as a means to an end,
Right.
and I'm here to say that you can be both, and there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with it being both. It's just like, I think that guys like to use that, like to say, well, why are you really doing that? They think you're being superficial. They think you're being shallow, for going to the gym, or for not even maybe doing that, but just like, trying to be a better version of yourself. Maybe you want to learn a different language. Maybe you want to, take classes at the local college. You want to, like, in some way improve yourself. I think that the want or the desire for that, first of all, has to be something that's self-centered. It has to be something that you say, look, I want this for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay for you to want that. And I think that's really the starting point of mental point of origin, is accepting that it's okay to want something just for yourself. Like I said, because we're so programmed to be of use. Like
Yeah.
this is one thing I think the MGTOW's got right, is that today's men are expected to have 100% responsibility, but we get 0% authority,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
accepting authority, or drawing, like saying, look, I'm going to be an authority. I'm going to be an authority on something, and you're going to listen to me authoritatively on whatever it is, right? Just to even to just say that, or just to even think that, is, for a lot of guys, is really a tough step for them. Have you ever, I'm sure you have, do you remember, the dog whisperer, Cesar
Oh
Millan?
yeah. Yeah.
Cesar
Mhm.
Millan, right? And so that, I think that was a really kind of a potent show to really illustrate how and this is going to sound really funny, right? But how we don't want to offend. We don't want to
Yeah.
take, right? We don't, like, to the point where we won't discipline our dogs, where we won't enforce our will on our dogs. And like, if you
Yeah.
look at any one of these episodes of Cesar Millan, he's saying, you need to be you need to be the alpha of the pack, right? You need to show the dog that you are the authority in that pack. And anybody who knows me knows that I've reconditioned greyhounds for almost 10 years now. And that's one thing I learned from a very early age. And when my daughter was very small, I always told her, I said, you command the dog. The dog doesn't command you. You don't
Right.
walk, the dog doesn't walk you. You walk the dog, right? And it's okay to enforce your will on this animal. That's okay. The fact the dog wants you to do so. You're not crushing the dog's spirit
Right.
because you are exercising your will on the dog. And and Cesar Millan, to his credit, made a
Yeah.
TV show based on the fact that people just simply, they're so unassuming
Yeah.
that they would never even do something like that. And so what happens is the dogs end up really, horribly behaved, and they'll never discipline the dog, and they'll never command the dog, and they'll never put themselves or enforce their will on the dog, because I don't want to crush his little doggy spirit. No, you have to do that. They're not just dogs, but like for people too, they're expecting guidance, they're expecting leadership, they're expecting all of that. They're expecting your authority. And when you don't believe that you should have that authority, or that authority is never made real for you, then you
Right.
get a society wherein nobody wants to discipline their dogs. Nobody wants to command their dogs because they don't want to crush the sparrow. I don't want to hurt them. I think that's one illustration of I think a greater whole, where guys simply don't want to, and women too, but they simply don't want to assume that authority because they think that maybe it feels false to them, or maybe it
Right.
feels like an act. And that's where I was going with this, is that I think a lot of guys, they think that like pickup artistry, or they think that the red pill is all about acting in a certain way. And it's not just about acting. It's about, I mean, there is a behavioral component to it, but it's about changing your mind about yourself. And
Yeah.
that's the hardest part, I think, for guys, because it's like I said before, they don't want to exercise their will on anyone. They want to just like step back and like, well, I'll just be myself and women will come to me. And that's what I've always been told. That's the cop out, right? And
Yeah,
that's in the
exactly.
first book as well, is like, just be yourself. Well, I'm going to go chug down a 6-pack of beer and eat a pie from Domino's and watch anime. And that's just me. That's just me being myself. I don't understand why fitness models won't come and talk to me. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like, there's that unassumingness. Like, well, they don't want to do things because they don't want to feel false. Right. They don't want to, they don't want to, they don't want to feel like they're putting on a mask or a facade. But this is one of the reasons I kind of get into it with guys who are really big on Myers-Briggs or the MBTI personality test, because personality, and this is one thing I studied actually in college,
It's fluid.
is fluid.
Yeah.
It is not static. And if you don't believe me on that, ask any guy who went on deployment and came back with PTSD. All of the things that he saw over there when he was deployed messed with him, and it turned him into somebody different. And that's the traumatic way of that happening. But you get to decide who you get to be, who you want to be, right? And so that, again, taking that authority, taking that, exercising your will over something, and exercising your will over yourself, and then saying, you know what, this is the authentic me. And if you don't like it, well, then fine, I'm going to go, I'll be doing what I'm doing. And when you've decided that this is the real me, then you can come back and talk to me. And if not, then okay, have a good life.
Yeah, I got so much shit. I mean, I've done several videos where I said I don't believe there's such a thing as introversion or extroversion, and people go ape shit about this because they've been told that they're introverts. Yeah,
they're clinging to, no, don't take my introversion away.
And my answer is like, it depends on the context, right? I mean, heck, I used to play like nerdy, like Magic the Gathering card games, and those little introverted kids, when they had their fucking cards and they were playing with their buddies, they would get in your face and yell at you, and like they're all of a sudden they're badass alpha males, right? And they're extroverted at that point. It's like, but people want to hide behind this kind of thing.
It's contextual is what it is. That's what I call the contextual alpha, is guys who are like, the easiest explanation of this is the guys who are like teachers, like a man in a teaching a class. He doesn't even have to be all that good looking, but he is the one that is giving direction to everyone else in that class. I have to be really careful of this too, because like in my line of work, I work in the alcohol and liquor industry, but sometimes I'll be on a commercial shoot, or I'll be doing something where we're using live actors and things like that. And I have to be really careful of this because like I'm already pretty adept at game, but like obviously I'm not using it to get laid because I've been married for so long. But I can be on a shoot and I can be, okay, you go here. I need you doing this. I need you doing, like I'm playing director, right? And this is not like something I do all the time. It's just like I have to do it for this one thing. But you have to be careful because women get off on that. They like, oh yes, sir, I'll do whatever you say. They want that command presence there to tell them what to do, right? Same that and like take me out of that, and nobody wants to listen to what I have to say. Or if I'm teaching a class or something, like a lot of teachers get this, though, their students will fall in love with them. The girl students will fall in love with them, only because of that class. You take them out of that classroom environment, they're like, what was I thinking? Because he's not that good looking. But once he's in there and he knows what he's talking about, and people are, because it has what's called social proof and pre-selection. And when other girls are going, oh, isn't Mr. So-and-so cute? Um, that feeds into that contextual idea of what is alpha. And same things for introversion and extroversion. I have played Magic myself. And these guys who would otherwise be very introverted, or in another social environment, become very extroverted when they're in a game or a tournament or something like that. And they're guys that you wouldn't think twice about, but their minds are so analytical,
Yep.
and they're like chess players. They understand what your moves are going to be like 7 steps ahead of you. But pull them out of that situation and put them in a social situation with girls, and they're awkward and nerdy, and they don't know what to do with themselves. It's that contextualization of whatever the social event is.
Exactly. And that's the same thing. It can be trained. It can be, you can learn that in a different context. I mean,
Mhm.
I was extremely awkward and very socially inept guy, but I had to just repeated exposure. And then
Mhm.
I think the other thing, that you're saying too, that I think a lot of people don't want to talk about with the kind of, dominance, like, I mean, we can call it what it is, but women actually want that, especially in the
Mhm.
bedroom. Like, I think that guys like are very much permission seeking, and they don't understand that it's actually
Mhm.
like exerting your will. Like, what you want is actually what actually drives a lot of the
Mhm.
attraction that women. I mean, you look at for example, books like 50 Shades of Grey, and it's like, well, okay, I mean, it's like it's a New York Times #1 bestseller. It's like someone's buying this book, right? Like,
Mhm.
so you got to really, like, think about, like, why, what is the
Yeah,
psychology behind this?
what is the underlying, what's underpinning all that? I believe that remember we were talking about how men and women have different mental firmwares, okay?
Mm,
Part of women's mental firmware is to want a man, to expect competence from a man, to expect a man to be
yeah,
able to do a lot of different things. Now I'm gonna lead into the sexual side of this here in just a second, but there is a need, I think that's an evolved need in women to seek out competency in a man, to understand that even if the worst shit in the world happened, he's going to be okay, and I'm going
yeah,
to be okay because I'm with this dude. So if the floodwaters come, he's going to lift me up out of that, and our kids, and we're going to be all right. Or if the house gets blown over by a tornado, he's going to go out. He has the knowledge to go and build us another house if that's the case, right? That's creative intelligence, right?
right,
Creative intelligence is an attraction cue for men. It's not an arousal cue; it's an attraction cue for men, and there's two different things there. Um, but so women seek out competency in men. That's one of the core things, and then they want to find the man who has the most competency. And how do we find that? Well, men compete with each other. We always are going to compete with each other.
right,
Again, we think idealistically, and as a result of that, our idealism is based on merit. And for instance, when they've done studies, or I can show you the research, that they will give this test group of women, they'll give them a certain amount of resources, right? They'll give them a little bit of money. They'll give them, say, okay, here's $1,000. Give this to your group, which is all female, right? And what women will do is like, okay, one for you, one for you,
right,
one for you, one for you, right? And then they'll do it out as equalist as possible, or as collectivist as possible, so everybody gets one, or everybody gets what their share is. If you do the same thing with men, for a group of men, whatever it is that they're based on, or whatever they're together for, they will naturally hand out resources or money or whatever based on merit.
right,
So Joe, you did a good job. Here's your $10. Jimmy, you did a really good job. Here's your $50. Tim, here's $5, dude. You're on the team. Don't worry. And then they'll give it out as per whatever the function of that guy is, because there's a natural dominance hierarchy, because men want to reward merit,
right,
right? And where does that come from? That comes from women seeking competency in men.
yeah,
So that's what we're born with. And we're born to, I mean, I'm not saying that men can't be cooperative. We are, obviously, we cooperate to do things. Women talk, men do, right? Men get together for a project and we build things and we cooperate, right? But when it comes to intrasexual competition, men form dominance hierarchies, and those dominance hierarchies are based on the competence of that guy. And so women are always looking for that competence. And it's like Joe might be more competent than Jim, right? And so maybe he's a little bit, he's cuter. Let's go for him, right? I mean, we're thinking of these things in terms of sexual arousal at this point, because we're looking at competence based on the criteria of physical prowess, right? Well, Jim
Right.
can run the 50, faster than so and so, right? That kind of thing. So you're looking at those competence. Those are what Peterson calls competence hierarchies. But so when it comes to that's okay. So that's intrasexual relationships. That's men with men and women with women. When it comes to intersexual relationships, women are expecting that dominance from that guy to transfer over into her relationship with him.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So she's like, women will say, well, I want an equal partner. No, you don't. I will tell you right now, women, when they get into these quote unquote egalitarian relationships, what they're really hoping is that he'll man up, right? That he'll step up and he'll be competent. They're never, it's because of the societal, because of the social conventions that we have right now, it's impolite to expect women not to sort of woman down while men man up, right? We think that there's going to be some sort of equal footing between the two of them, and just simply never is the case. That's one of the reasons why, like, because women are in the workplace right now, it upsets that balance, because women, they always say, I want an equal partner. No, they want a partner who's just a little bit anywhere a little bit taller, or a little taller and a little bit, more apt than them, sexual market value wise, or really above them. Because hypergamy doesn't seek its own level. It always seeks the better than what it thinks it deserves. So if a woman is like, say, a 7, she thinks she deserves a 9, right? She thinks she deserves an 8 or a 9. If she got a guy who's just a 7, then she's going to start looking for a guy who's like a little bit better positioning as far as sexual market value is concerned. But women do look for dominance. They look for a guy who's in control. They look for a guy who is at the top of the dominance hierarchy, and she expects that to transfer over into her relationship. And women will fight this because they've been taught and they've been conditioned to believe that they should be fighting this, rather than going with it, rather than accepting it and embracing it, because that is what will lead to them having the life that they want to have, with kids and, family and the later goals. Because right now, I think young women don't realize that their goals when they're 22 will not be their goals when they're 32.
Exactly. Yeah. I think also, I thought about this concept a lot, like just the idea of, it's almost like a defense mechanism, like to scare away the decoys, or to sort out the decoys, right? Because I feel like if women behaved in a different way, if they were, if they were honest about their wanting of a dominant man, if they, if they said that they don't want equality, right? Then what would happen is, it would be very difficult, because a lot of men would just say, okay, well, yeah, I'm the dominant man, right? Or they would so almost by we've almost got to it's almost to a point where it's a filtering mechanism, where it's like, okay, well, the actual dominant man, the actual masculine man, doesn't give a shit. He didn't give a fuck anyway. He doesn't care if you are a feminist. He doesn't care if you think you want equality. He's just going to do whatever the fuck he wants to do. And so he's unaffected by this, this smoke screen.
Because
whereas all the other guys,
his own mental point of origin. That's
exactly.
Why.
And so to me, in some way, I see the negative aspects, where a lot of guys are very angry about this, and like, this is, bad thing in society. But to me, I kind of see the positive of it. I kind of see it as like, well, it's kind of like, it's doing a lot of filtering work, because the guy that cares about this shit and is worried about being politically correct is the guy that is really seeking external validation. And so he's putting on a front. Whereas the guy that actually doesn't care, he's
it's much easier not to give a fuck if you actually don't give a fuck. Like have those behaviors, like pass that off. I think what's interesting is when I'll try to break this down and to distill it down as simple as I can. When we talk about hypergamy, women want alpha fucks and beta bucks. Okay, they want the exciting alpha guy who's a good breeding stock. They want that guy who they're going to go have the same night sex with. The guy who I always joke about is the hot dude in the foam cannon party on spring break in Cancun. That's the guy that she wants. Yeah, I was drunk, he was cute, and one thing led to another. Okay,
Right.
that's what that is. Okay, then there's the guy who is, well, I don't want to have sex with him until the fourth or fifth date because I don't want him to think I'm easy because he's boyfriend material and he would make a good dad, right? There's cads versus dads, alpha fucks, beta bucks, cads versus dads.
Right.
And that dynamic transfers over, I should say extrapolates into so many different dynamics, both intersexually or sociosexually as well. But so what you're just describing here is that women want they would very much like to find both of those qualities in the same dude, right? They would love to find the guy who actually has his shit together, has some fame, has a good job, makes a lot of money, is the great provider. But oh man, is he he's the hot fireman from the fireman calendar, right? And I want him now, that kind of thing. It would be great if you could put those two guys together. But women today do not expect to even find that guy. In fact, I would argue that women are not even looking for those same qualities in the same guy, because one guy's qualities cancels out the other guys. So if a guy is caring and nice and loyal and is the perfect, dad who would make a good parental investment guy, like he's going to be there for the kids and he's going to take care of us, blah, blah, blah. That guy is never going to be as exciting as hot alpha guy from the foam cannon party. Okay. That guy is going to be fun and exciting and dangerous too. Right. That's one of the reasons why, like, say, 50 Shades of Grey is so popular, because there's an element of danger there. But because it's written by a woman, that there's going to be some safety added to it. So nothing is really bad is going to happen to her at the end of the story, right? But there's this need, and I think that women are very conflicted about this, because their arousal factor is aroused by the alpha bad boy, dangerous guy who's bad for them, who won't commit to them, who just wants to have sex with the fuck buddy, right? The guy who just shows up, they have sex, it's so hot and good and passionate and everything, but he would make the worst father, he would make the worst guy to pair off with. But boy, I really want to have his babies, right? Sexy son theory, right? I want to have that guy's babies. But the other guy is good, he's emotional tampon, he's the guy that I want to cry on his shoulder and complain about the guy that I just had sex with, right?
Yeah.
So when you see those paradoxes, there's that want for this dominance in that guy. There's this want for, when a woman is having sex with a guy, she wants that guy to be dominant in the bedroom. She wants that guy to be, it's not to say that women can't be sexually aggressive. They can, but it's got to be the guy who brings it out. Like, no woman wants to be sexually aggressive with the meek and mild beta bucks guy. She wants to be sexually aggressive with the guy who's hot and exciting and dangerous,
right?
And who's bad for her, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's because she knows that guy is going to take her from behind and pull her hair. That's what that's what she's thinking, right?
Yep.
Because that's what they are evolved for. That's what we evolved for, right? Is that there's that dominant side of us, and then there's that kind of like, it's like our better angels, right? I mean, there's the what we want to say, the evil side of us that's really sort of animalistic, and then there's the think about everything and be nice and be upstanding and moral. And it's like, I'm not saying that you should be one or the other. I'm just saying that there needs to be some sort of medium between the two. But when it comes to sexual selection, that's how women make their sexual selection. And those sexual selections are modified by whatever it is that woman needs at that particular time. So if she's, like I always say, the epiphany phase, which is 29 to 31 years old, she can no longer get the alpha guys that she used to, that she had so much fun, enthusiastic sex with back in her, I was so crazy in my party years, or my college days, right? But she knows that she needs long-term security. She knows she needs to find a guy who's going to be dependable, who's got a job, who's got some benefits. That guy, she's going to suddenly have a little bit more attraction to, because he can solve a problem for her that the other guy couldn't solve, right? Yeah. Because she can no longer get with that guy. So she's got to find some way to cash out of the sexual marketplace before the casino closes, right?
Yeah. No, that's very true. And I think also, I think there's an aspect, like the way that you put it, we're almost like, it's the ills of society. Like we're almost teaching, like with some of the guys that go really hard on the MGTOW, is like they're hating women, they're hating the feminism and all these things. And then you've got, and they want women almost to become like men, right? Because they want to say, oh, well, it's all equal. Women need to hold themselves to the same standards. And to some degrees, I believe that's true. But I think to some degrees, like it's sort of like we're not all the same. We're different. And I think a lot of ways, like men are kind of split. They either go one path or the other. They're either going to be that alpha dominant male who doesn't give a fuck and tends to be the fuck boy, or they're going to go that beta provider route. Whereas, I feel like there is a middle ground. It's just that it's a very difficult, like we're almost training people to go one way or the other. They're either going to be,
Well,
you know,
we're masculine. Well, I mean, ever since the sexual revolution, we've been masculinizing women and feminizing men. Okay. Even on a good day, I've always said that even before the sexual revolution, it was I would argue it was still probably 80% of guys were beta blue pill guys, like where they're the dads, right? They're the nice guy, dependable guy, because that's what was rewarded back then. That's part of the old social contract. Like if you go to work, you get a job, and you get a pension, and you stay with the same company, and you save your nickels, and you buy a house, and you get a dog, and you find a good wife, because that's what ultimately that's what a woman wants. She wants to have a family, and if you're right there and you've got everything set up and you've created this nest for her to come into, then of course, how could she not love you, right? Well, we've taken that all away. We've thrown that out the window right now because we want to believe in egalitarian equalism. We
right,
want to believe in blank slate equalism, that men and women are just the same. They have the equal potential. We're more alike than we are different. Like they would like to say that we are exactly the same except for the plumbing, right? Like
right,
well, you have a penis and you have a vagina, but you're basically essentially, gender is just a social construct, right? It's just how you're thinking about yourself. And it's like, no, that is absolutely 100% false. And you can
right,
prove this is false through evolutionary biology, because we have the technology and the science behind this to show that men have a different evolved mental firmware than women do. I'll give you an example of this really quickly here. When little boys come out of the womb, boys have a natural affinity for throwing a ball or throwing a
right,
rock, right? Why? Well, because they had to hit animals, right? I mean, we had to grow up to be hunters. We had to come out really quickly, and we had to be able to throw. And little boys, without being taught, can take a rock or a ball or whatever, and they naturally know how to throw by putting their shoulder into the throw and twisting their body with it. And they, without being taught, they understand that. That's one thing. Okay. And this is just one behavior set. Women don't have that. Little girls don't have that. Right.
right,
They throw like a girl. I'm going to throw like a girl. Right. That's why we laugh, and women hate that too. Like, oh, how dare you say don't throw like a girl, right? Because they think that that's stereotypical and sexist, but it's not. It's based on our evolved mental firmware. So there are certain things, like, for instance, like we tend to be scared of snakes, right? Or
right,
spiders, right? Because they're poisonous animals. There's something that could kill us before. And so that's kind of like in our species hardware, our firmware, right? So you're born, oh my God, it's a snake, right? It's slithering, gross. Because that could kill us. And if we weren't fearful of it, we would, or like, for instance, like if you see a dead body, or if you see like dog shit on the
right,
street, right? You avoid that, right? Because you have this natural revulsion. That's part of our species evolved mental firmware, is just to avoid dead bodies. Why? Because it's necrotic. It could get you diseased, right? You could die from that's why we bury the bodies, and because we didn't want to get diseased, right? So we have that sort of as part of our mental firmware, but men have a certain set and women have another set.
yeah,
Women tend to be more nurturing. Women have a better facility for communication. Well, but let's just say this. People say, well, little girls can be taught to throw. Yes, they can, but they don't come out of the womb knowing the same thing that a
right,
boy does. A boy knows how to throw like a boy, like right away. I mean, unless he's not taught, or unless it's not something that's encouraged for him. But the boy knows, like, instinctively how to throw an object. Boys are instinctively better with spatial recognition and spatial, like, objects and things, in 3 dimensions. Like I said, men are. Dr. Pinker said something to the effect that Men are interested in things, women are interested in people. Why is that? Well, because we evolved from hunter-gatherer tribes, right? Well, women had to interact with each other while they were part of the tribe, and they had to learn cooperation and collectivism. And men had to learn how to hunt, and they had to have skills as to how to go and bring the caribou back to the tribe, right? And oh, look, Bill brought the caribou back. You get an extra piece of meat, Bill. Great
Right.
for you. That kind of stuff. So you've got those kinds of dynamics playing in human beings now in 2019. Okay. And
Right.
so when I say, like, say, for instance, like, can you teach a girl to throw like a boy? Absolutely. But you
Right.
have to teach her how to do that. You have to, so you can teach a human being behaviors. You can teach like, I don't know if you've done martial arts or anything like that, but like when you're doing martial arts, they have to teach you like that to go against that fear response. Like you were just saying before,
Yeah.
it's like we're self-preserving species, right? So if something comes at your face, you flinch, right? You naturally do something like that because you're trying to avoid damage. That's part of your instinct, is to get out of the way. Is there something that's going to come and enter your airspace and try to hit you in the face, right? So you do that. But like when you are learning a martial art, you learn to put your face in front of the fist because you know what to do, right? You know how to do
Right.
a block, or you know how to do whatever. You know how to dodge out of the way, right? So so it's not like this fearful, flinching guy, but you have to learn those things. You have to learn to go against your evolved nature, and learn to sort of tamp down that fear. I mean, we teach soldiers that all the time, right? I mean, you get that adrenaline rush, but they teach you to, hold your ground instead of run away, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you can teach women how to become men. You can teach men how to become women. If you say, well, this is the correct way of doing things, we're going to feminize boys and we're going to masculinize girls. But is that doing them favors? Is instead of embracing their female nature or embracing their masculine nature and trying to say, well, you know what? Men and women are just the same. No, they're not just the same. But we have been thinking this for so long now that we think that there's 68 different genders, right? Or we think that there's like this social. I completely
Right.
reject social constructivism, as you probably guessed.
Yeah.
um, but you can still teach and condition people. That's why I call it blue pill conditioning, because
Right.
from the time we're born, really, well, let's just say like 5 years old. From the time you're 5 years old, little kids are like sponges. They pick up on all this stuff. Um, we teach our boys to be more like girls, and we teach them as if they are defective girls. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to condition out of them this natural masculine uh, part of them, that's part of their mental firmware, that's part of their evolved mental firmware. And if we can't teach it out of them, we'll drug it out of them.
Right.
We'll put them
Yeah.
on Adderall, or we'll put them on Ritalin or whatever, because they're acting out, and they're not acting like a sweet little girl is, and they're not learning like a girl. So there must be something wrong with them. So we're going to drug them. We're not going to give them time to play in the yard. We're not going to teach them like boys. And so we teach our boys as if they're defective girls, but we also teach our girls as if they can be the apex ideal of what a boy should be, right?
Right.
And again,
Exactly.
so we're equally teaching our girls, and I've never said this before, we're equally teaching our girls that they, because of blank slate equalism, they have the same potential as a boy, like no matter what it is. Like I was just watching this commercial, I think it was Nike just put it out, and it was something to the effect that they were encouraging like men, like male parents, to put their girls into football, and
Yeah.
like full contact, like put the pads on and
Yeah.
get tackled football. I'm like, you're going to get slaughtered, because there's just simple biological differences between men and women. It's upper body strength. Men evolved for combat. Men
Right.
evolved to take a hit. Women didn't evolve to take a hit. They evolved to have babies, right? But
Oh
we
yeah.
can teach them, or we can change the rules, or we can change the game. We can fundamentally change football to be girl ball, right? And then now everybody can play, right? And everybody gets a participation trophy. Why? Because we live in a feminine primary society that is based on collectivism, and everybody should be a winner, right? That's where that comes from. You get one, and you get one, and you get one, and you get one, and here's your participation trophy. And we've changed the nature of the game, so everybody's a winner right now. All that is female collectivism.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm getting carried away here.
No, no, I'm in 100% agree with you. I mean, you saw the Gillette commercial, I'm sure, and that
Mhm.
it was just like such a like so many women were like, I don't understand what's wrong with this. And it's like, well, it's because you're so brainwashed, like and so many men even that were so
Mhm.
brainwashed that you don't even see what is wrong with the idea that they're portraying that these things are bad. And again, I think another piece of it too is just that it's like, I thought Jack Donovan's book was really good too on the way
Mhm.
of men, because it really opened up my eyes to say that, okay, masculinity has nothing to do with good or bad. It is like there's two sides of this coin, and along with the good traits, what we'd call the good traits of masculinity, are
Mhm.
some dark sides as well. And
Yes.
it's a package deal. You can't
Yeah.
just take and dissect and call one part toxic and one part good, because it's a package deal. The
Yeah.
same drive that makes a guy go and save someone from a burning building and risk his life is the same drive that makes him sometimes an arrogant prick that is going to
Mhm.
like get what he wants regardless of how many people he has to step on. It's the
Right.
same exact thing, and it's
See,
how
they
it's
they don't
applied.
they don't accept that.
Yeah.
They only accept that masculinity is a social construct. They only because a masculinity again is really just a basis of a gender, right?
Yeah.
They don't and that's why they want to. Well, originally they wanted to qualify different aspects of masculinity as either toxic or they of course they only just say toxic. They nothing there's no
Right.
positive. They never talk about any positive aspects of masculinity. They only talk about um, the toxic aspects, and all the only thing is that there is no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's only masculinity, and there are the aspects that agree with the feminine imperative, and then there are ones that conflict with it. And the aspects that conflict with it are sometimes the things that you need the most. When you need somebody to defend you, when you need somebody to save you from a burning building, when you need somebody to put his fist or put his face between a fist and
Right.
ladies, that you need that aggression. You need that there's a reason why testosterone inspires aggression, because we needed that in our evolutionary past. And you know what, anybody who's saying, well, we don't need that anymore, we have guns or we have this, it's like, no, you still need the remember we were just talking about a minute ago where we said um, people are afraid to enforce their will, right?
Right.
What is more masculine than a guy who is ready to enforce his dominance or enforce his will, right? And that's why Cesar Millan is in business, right? Because
Right.
if you're too hesitant to enforce your will, then you're certainly not going to find your balls. You're certainly not going to
Exactly.
find you're certainly
Yeah.
not going to, or you're going to want to fight that testosterone. We teach our boys that they're poisoned by their testosterone. And but I agree. I love I've met him on several occasions. I've talked with Jack Donovan a lot. Great books. I
Yeah.
can't suggest them more. The Way of Men and Becoming a Barbarian are actually my two favorite. He's got another one out too, but Sky Without Eagles or something as well. But I think that those two are really good. And they actually taught me something about masculinity, because when I was writing positive masculinity, I used the term conventional masculinity a lot. I didn't want to use traditional because everybody has different traditions, right? So, whatever cultural traditions for masculinity between cultures is not always the same thing. So I would call there's unique aspects of masculinity that are unique to the male of the species,
Right.
and are what defines what is masculine. So that's why I was called those conventional masculinity. And um, people don't want that. You're like what Jack was saying. He was saying, women don't, they only want the aspects of masculinity that are convenient for them, and they
Right.
think that they should be able to turn them on and turn them off at will, because we're all equals, right? Because we're all the same. No, we're not. We evolve differently. We have different evolved, we have different brain architecture. We the same species? Yes, we're the same species, but it's like we have different hardware, we have different firmware, and the software is whatever we have put into us or whatever we're taught throughout. When we talk about nature versus nurture, nature is your body, your instincts, your chemical makeup, Then there's the mental firmware, that the way your brain is wired. It's just like a computer, man. So it's like, there's firmware that's already established in your computer right now. So your computer's going to run in a certain way, or it knows to run a certain way. And then there's the software that you could put into it. And that's the programming that usually ends up being what I call blue pill conditioning. And that blue pill conditioning is supposed to, that software adjustment is hoping against hope that it can change the firmware, but the firmware doesn't change. It's what you were born with. It's what has been fundamentally, written into your DNA. And I think that we need to get to a point, I think, in society where we need to come up with a new way of thinking that is based on based on gender differences, based
Yeah.
on evolved, concrete, conventional gender differences, and embracing those things, and not and rejecting these ideas of like social constructionism. Social constructionism has failed, and it's failed because and it's provably, observably failed. And not just because, oh well, this didn't work or that didn't work. It failed because we know enough about the human mind, we know enough about our biologies, and we know enough about what triggers emotions. We know enough about our dopamine and our hormones and our brain architecture, and just we know so much, but yet we still cling to this antiquated idea of blank slate equalism, and we base a society around that. We base our opinions, our politics, our religion, everything around this idea that, well, we're all created equal. No, we're not all created equal. In fact, there's no such thing as equality.
Right.
And to presume equality presumes that we have everything in a vacuum, to that our environments make no difference. Like, people say, well, you must think that men are superior to women. Like, no, I think it just depends on what we're talking about. What is the challenge that is being posed to either sex? Is it, fighting off is it choking out a mountain lion that's following you? And did you see that?
Yeah.
Is it like killing a wild animal? Then yeah, maybe a man is a bit superior to a woman in that sense.
Right.
Is it bearing children and nursing children? Guess what? The woman's going to beat the guy every single time, right?
Right.
Because the challenge is different. That's why to say that we're equal or we're created equal or whatever is bullshit, because the challenges change. Our environment is chaotic. It's what is being asked of us. That's really what the definition of evolution is. It's not the survival of the fittest as much as it is the survival of the organism that can adapt to its environment. And
Exactly.
if we believe erroneously that we're all the same, we're not going to be able to adapt to an environment that is going to challenge us, because we're going to think, like, for instance, like the transgender wrestler
Oh
who's
yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
And that's just, you can see the differences between the two of them, between a man and a woman. So
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, even in that case, it comes down to just the simple solution of like, of just saying, if you're that person, because if you say, well, what about this person? It's like, well, if you're that person, do you not have enough self-awareness to say, you know what, I'm just going to step out. Like, I'd like to do this, but I'm not going to do this sport because it doesn't seem
mhm.
like it would be fair. Like, this is going to
Well,
cause
yeah,
problems.
and so what's the challenge? What's the physical challenge? The physical challenge is wrestling. Okay, well, does a man have an advantage over a woman in that? Well, according to blank slate equalism, no. He should be able, because he's gender equal and he has the equal potential to do it. And it's like, I'm just going to call myself a woman and compete and just like beat the pants off of these
Right.
girls left and right. Well, and then so what do they say? And then so you force women into this this understanding that you can't have a biologically, I think you'll probably see this in the future, like you can't have a biological male competing against biological female, and they'll try to make some really cutesy way of excusing why they won't have a guy, a female with the penis, competing against, a man with a vagina, whatever whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Because they I think at some point they'll realize that it's the challenge that defines the game and not the people that define the game.
Well, people don't want to. They don't even want to see the real. Like, I mean, even like especially God forbid you. I had what's the name on the channel? The guy, the Google guy, I can't remember his name, the Google Manifesto guy.
Mhm.
And I mean, God forbid you mention IQ differences between. I mean, it's just like it is what it is. Like there's
Mhm.
IQ differences between races. It makes
Mhm.
sense that like biologically there's going to be differences on an average. There's height differences between races.
Mhm.
Genetic attributes. There's height differences
Yeah.
between sexes, right?
That's the joy of globalism right now,
But I
is
mean, this is just
putting
like pure
everybody together
science,
in one
right? Like,
vat. Yeah. Hey, I have to get
oh
going
yeah,
here.
okay,
I gotta get heading out here.
all
But
right, man.
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Before you go here, guys, make sure you check out if you haven't already. I'll put a link for Rational Male and all of Rollo's books, and go subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. And leave some comments, give some thumbs up, and share some love here.
Cool. Great, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.